roller coaster ride, dumpster fire, and magically, on Christmas Eve, Mother Nature candy-coated the world, made everything seem possible again. Lit a little fire in our lives, gave us a little joy. It's the New Year's show. It is the end of the year, time for some resolutions. You guys make resolutions? Who's learning Chinese? Who's going to read War and Peace, finally? Who's going to exercise? You know? I don't know. Maybe. Might do all that. Might do all of that. It's kind of time to take stock. Oh, I learned a new Norwegian word today, friluftsliv, which I think is something we can apply to our lives go forward. It means the open air life, and Norwegians have embraced this concept that whenever they can, they get outside, no matter how frickin' cold it is. And we're going to have to deal with that kind of concept as well. So we got a little fireplace thing in the backyard. We're just going to pile on some blankets. We're going to wear two pairs of socks. We're going to put on our thermal underwear. We're going to frickin' sit out there and socially distance with our friends. I don't care how cold it is. Yeah, it's time to take stock of your friends. Made some new friends this year, which is great. Turned some acquaintances into true friends, I think, which is super great. Kept in touch with all my longtime friends. They kept me strong. Who's got my back? I'll tell you who's got my back. My gal, my partner, my love. She's got my back. She has made everything possible. She was there every day for me this year, and these little broadcasts couldn't happen without her. My friends got my back, keeping me happy, giving me some chuckles this year. I know everybody's had some hard times, but we got each other's back. Learned some new words this year. Zoom. Zoom's a verb now, so I'm going to zoom you. Don't zoom me. Super spreader. If I heard super spreader at this time last year, I would have assumed it had something to do with peanut butter. Bubbles. Bubbles is like an amusing 1940s stripper name, but now it's something we live in. You know, flatten the curve. I assume that has something to do with what you're doing in the gym, or at least that's what it used to, but not anymore. So, Blur's Day. What day of the week is it? I don't know. They're all the same. It's Blur's Day. Anyway, so we're gonna do our New Year's show. We're gonna drop the ball, baby. Just remember, the wicked are still strong, as Tom Waits says, but the people got the power, as Patti Smith says. So let's accent the positive, and let's do this new year. Let's frickin' do it, all right? Here we go. New Year's Eve coming up. It's a big deal. What's it got to do with folk music, you may ask? Well, just hold on to your seats, people, and I'm going to explain. January 1st, you think it's pretty simple, right? New Year's, January 1st. Not always the case. So way back in the bad old days of the Roman Empire, they had this weird-ass 355-day calendar, and when things got out of sync, they would just add some days. And there was like a process to, they'd go to Parliament and add a few days here and there. Well, there was so much corruption and stupidity that sometimes people just added more days than they should, and sometimes they didn't add a day when they were supposed to. By the time old Julius Caesar comes around, their calendar is so fucked up that they don't know if they're coming or going. And it is just like totally sideways. So Julius Caesar says, oh man, do I have to do everything around here? So he hires a bunch of clever Trevors from Egypt, and they put on their pointy hats and get their slide rules and their pencils, and they straighten the whole thing out. And they make the 365 and a half quarter day calendar. They got the leap years. They straighten out the months. They add some days. Think about it. September, October, November, December. Those are Latin words for 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So how did December 10 end up being the 12th month? Well, they had to shuffle stuff around, okay? So just deal with it. And the other thing they decided was that January, which is the month named after the god Janus, who is the god of doorways. He's the guy with two heads, looking forward, looking backwards, looking to the future, looking to the past. Perfect. He's going to be the gateway to the new year. So January 1 is New Year. That's it. I don't want to hear any more nonsense from you people. And that worked out great for about 1580 years. People used the Julian calendar, and it was pretty freaking good. But in 1580, Pope Gregory the 13th, he got a bunch of other pointy-headed, clever people, and they decided, well, the Julian calendar is pretty good, but it's gotten out of sync a little bit over 1580 years, and we need to fix it. So they did, and that's the Gregorian calendar, which is what we have here in Canada and the US and Europe. But there are some other people, like in Serbia and Russia and Ukraine and a few other areas, that they took a look at this proposal from Pope Gregory the 13th, and they said, fuck you. You're wrong. We're keeping our calendar. We like our calendar, and we're keeping it, so screw you. And that's why those people who still use the Julian calendar are 13 days off from the rest of the world. So there you go. Be that as it may. Anyway, New Year's. Who does New Year's like New York City? Nobody. That's who. So back in 1905, the New York Times, they moved uptown to Times Square. And at that time, that was the sticks. They moved like to the burbs, okay? People could not believe that they were going so far out of town up to Times Square. But anyway, they decided, you know what? We need a little hubbub going on, so we're gonna host the New Year's Eve party. Now, up until then, the New Year's Eve party had been hosted at the big church downtown. And the guys in the church, they didn't like this party because, you know, everybody get drunk, they'd throw up, they'd piss on the lawn, there's like unseemly behavior going on, shaking in the bushes. They said, New York Times, you want to take this party uptown? Fantastic, do that, please, take it away. So they did, and the Times, they threw their party, but they had, they did fireworks. And, you know, these are old school fireworks, and they're firing off fireworks, and, you know, ashes are coming down, and they're setting people's houses on fire and stuff. And it didn't work out too good. So in 1907, some clever dude says, listen, in the nautical world, out on ships, we have this thing we do where we raise and lower a ball if there's like a significant time or something happens, right? And the guys at the New York Times said, all right, yeah, this setting the woods on fire has got to stop. So we'll try the ball thing. Okay, we'll try that. So they built this big ball. It's like 600 pounds, 700 pounds, and it had 100 light bulbs on it. They attached it to this makeshift flagpole, and that's what they did in New Year's 1907. And they've been doing it ever frickin' since, haven't they? We've gone through a bunch of different balls. We've had ball replacement. We're up to our 7th ball now. And the ball we got now is the Millennium Ball that they made in 1999. And it's 6 tons, and it's covered with Waterford crystal. And it's got 32,000 LED lights, and, you know, they can make it sing and dance and say stuff. And it's pretty fancy. Up until 95, apparently, the raising and lowering of the ball was just some guys with ropes and pulleys and some dude with a stopwatch. But that turned out to be, you know, eventually it wasn't accurate enough. And also, one year, some little kid was monkeying around up in the ropes, and he got stuck there, and they had to stop lowering the ball at one point to go get him out. And I'm sure they gave him a good talking to. So after that, they automated the whole thing, and they made this great big fancy button that you push up in the control center. And they let celebrities push the button every year. So like Muhammad Ali is pushed it, Cyndi Lauper is pushed it, Lady Gaga has pushed the button. And, you know, a bunch of wretched politicians have done it. And, you know, some, you know, war heroes and firefighters and other, you know, worthies have done it over the years. They've gotten to push the button. And what happens when they push the button? Well, one thing that happens is 3,000 pounds of special confetti are dropped by 100 volunteers. It's special confetti. It's bigger than normal. And these guys are called confetti dispersal engineers, which sounds like a great job. I would love to have that job. So they're just dumping confetti off the top of buildings there. And the other thing that happens when the ball drops is they play a folk song. And it's possibly the most famous folk song in the world. And the folk song is Auld Lang Syne. And it's so there's two things about Auld Lang Syne that are interesting. One is that It's played by Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians. So how American is that? So Guy Lombardo was from London, Ontario, grew up in that area. As he's making his way in the world and touring his little orchestra around and learning his trade, there's a lot of Scottish people in southern Ontario, and the Scottish tradition on New Year's is called a Hogmanay, and that's the ancient Scottish New Year's tradition, Hogmanay. So one of the things they do on Hogmanay, among many other things, is they sing Auld Lang Syne. So Guy Lombardo learned the song, and it's totally a tradition. Usually the Scottish people would gather in a circle. They'd cross hands and grab their neighbor's hands. They'd sing the whole thing, and then the end of the song, they'd go rush to the center of the circle, and there'd be a lot of giggling and tickling, and that's way more fun when the guy is wearing a skirt instead of pants. So big fun. Auld Lang Syne tradition in the Scottish community in Scotland and in Canada. Other cool thing that happens on Hogmanay, at least in Scotland, is they have this thing called, they have this tradition called the Stonehaven Fireballs. And guys build these big balls out of all sorts of flammable material, and they attach it to ropes or chains. And then after dark, they come whipping down the main drag and they light their balls on fire and they're swinging them around their heads. So there's all these guys in skirts coming down with flaming balls. What is not to love about that? I think we should do that here. I mean, Toronto's got a pretty Scottish tradition. Why can't we have guys with flaming balls? I think that would be a great idea. All right? Be that as it may. Back to New Year's Eve. So Guy Lombardo started playing Auld Lang Syne in, I think, 1928 in New York City. And he kept playing it until he died in 1976. That's a good run. Wow, that's a paying gig. That is steady money. Every year. How many freaking years is that? That's a long time. So it became a beloved tradition. And, a lot of people thought it was a little schmaltzy, but on the other hand, Louis Armstrong thought it was the most sweet sounding thing he'd ever heard. So I'm going with Louis. And that they played the song. So Auld Lang Syne is an old folk song, and it was first really written down by Robbie Burns, the famous Scottish poet. And I think in 1796, he was sitting around, probably drinking a little ale, maybe chewing on some haggis, and he wrote this letter to the Scottish Museum. And he said, I've discovered this ancient Scots language poem called Auld Lang Syne, and I think you should take a listen to it and put it in your museum and file it away for future reference, which is what they did. Turns out it was actually an ancient poem because they found similar poems with similar lines backed into the 1500s and everything. So this is folk music. It's been around for a long, long time, and it's a folk tradition in Scotland. But it seems like Robbie pretty much added most of the verses himself. Robbie probably thought, I could do better than this, so he brushed them up a little bit. So the version that's come down to us from Robbie is a kind of a Scots language version. And, we can understand it. It's English, but it's got a bunch of obscure words in it every once in a while that we don't understand. So the version that we mostly know is the one that's been translated into modern English. But that version still leaves the old Scots words, Auld Lang Syne. So they stay. Everything else is modern English. So Auld Lang Syne, what does it mean? It means old long since, basically, literally. So what it really means is days gone by, old times. So really the question is it right that old times should be forgotten? And I think the answer is no. So basically the first verse, says, should old friends be forgot, and in Auld Lang Syne, the good old days. And basically, we'll share a cup of kindness. In other words, we'll cheers and drink some booze and talk about old days. And then there's a couple more verses where they talk about, all their travels, how they've been separated by miles and years and hardship. And then in the last verse, they come back together again, and they say that their wandering is done, and they're going to share a cup of goodwill. In other words, some more booze, and they're going to talk about Auld Lang Syne. So the old days gone by. So I'm not really Scottish. So when I hear this song year after year after year, I just I mumble along because I don't know the words, until you get to the chorus, and then, everybody can go Auld Lang Syne. But I never really totally understood what it was all about. So my New Year's resolution is to learn the damn words. And to that end, I'm going to play it, and I'm going to put the words on the screen so you can see it too. And we will discuss days gone by. And good riddance, actually, to some of the more recent days gone by. And let's look forward to some happier days coming up. All right? Happy New Year, everybody. Should old acquaintance be forgot, never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot, an Auld Lang Syne? For Auld Lang Syne, my Joe, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. Surely you'll buy your pint cup, and surely I'll buy mine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne, for Auld Lang Syne, my Joe, for Auld Lang Syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. We two have run about the slopes and picked the daisies fair. We've wandered many a weary foot since Auld Lang Syne, for Auld Lang Syne, my Joe, for Auld Lang Syne. We'll share a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. We two have paddled in the stream from morning sun till dine, but seas between us, broad of road since Auld Lang Syne, or Auld Lang Syne, my love, for Auld Lang Syne. We share a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. And there's a hand, my trusty friend, give me a hand of thine. We'll take a right good, we'll